Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Notice pull and air currents. Even in sleep, the moth listens. Dawn stretches across the landscape now, but not all moths vanish with it. Some remain still through the day, folded into bark hidden beneath leaves, part of the forest's soft breath. Others shift their rhythm and begin a daytime life, evolving into butterflies over time, or into species who don't fear the sun. The line between moth and butterfly is not always clear. Some say it's the antennae, moths with feathery brushes, butterflies with narrow clubs. Others say it's the hours they choose, moths for the night, butterflies for the day. But nature doesn't always draw hard lines. Sometimes it flows, just like the moth's flight, blending, shifting, adapting. There is something poetic in that even something so small, so easily overlooked, can be a master of navigation, a creature of deep perception, a memory of ancient knowledge. Moths remind us that we don't have to be loud to be wise, that we don't need to rush to understand, that sensing the world deeply is its own kind of brilliance. They are not travellers of highways, but of invisible threads, maps written in forces we forget exist. They show us that direction does not always require sight, and progress does not always mean speed. The human world, so full of light and noise, often forgets the value of darkness. But moths live by it. They are shaped by it. In the dark, they find their path. In the dark, they feel the earth speaking. And so they follow the moon not with eyes, but with instincts curled into their wings like tiny scrolls of ancient wisdom. It is not superstition. It is not mystery. It is science, lived quietly every night. Perhaps we could learn from them, not in how to fly, but in how to move through the unknown. How to trust what we feel, even when we can't explain it. How to let go of artificial light sometimes, and listen to softer guides. The smell of rain, the pull of the earth, the shape of a shadow, the rhythm of breath. Like the moth, we too are part of a world woven with unseen threads. And like them, we carry within us small compasses, not made of metal, but of memory and motion and wonder. So when the next night comes and the sky grows dark once more, step outside, stand still, look up, let the stars settle above you, and the breeze move softly around you. Somewhere, not far away, a moth is beginning its journey. You may not see it, you may not hear it, but it is there, lifting quietly into the air, wings catching moonlight like secrets. It is not lost, it is not wandering, it is navigating, through darkness, through silence, through a world too subtle for most to see. And in its soft flight, there is a lesson for us all, not in the answers it holds, but in the questions it asks with every turn of its wings. What guides you? What do you follow when the lights go out? Where is your moon? There are creatures who do not wait for light. When the sun lowers itself beyond the hills and the colours of the world begin to fade into blue and then into black, a new kind of vision awakens. This is the time when those without lamps or torches begin to see. They do not rely on sunlight nor on glowing bulbs fixed to ceilings. Instead, they read the dark itself, as if it were a soft page lit from within. Moths, bats, owls, deep sea fish, all belong to this hidden kingdom. But in this story, let us walk quietly alongside the moth once more, and understand how it sees a world that to us seems invisible. Its eyes are not like ours. They are round, large and strange, made not to see detail but to feel contrast, to catch the softest flicker of change in a night that most would call silent. The eye of a moth is a marvel of design. It does not shine. It does not sparkle, but its surface is a miracle of structure. Each eye is covered in thousands of tiny lenses, packed together like the seeds of a sunflower, each one tilted at a slightly different angle. These lenses make up what is called a compound eye, but unlike many other insects, the moth's eye has something extra. Its surface is covered in minute bumps, so small that they bend and scatter light in ways that reduce reflection. This allows the moth to see without giving away its position. It doesn't shimmer or glint. It absorbs light gently, helping it hide from predators. This same design is now studied in labs around the world. Scientists mimic it to create anti-glare coatings on camera lenses and phone screens. What the moth evolved for survival, we now copy for clarity. But what exactly do moths see? Their vision isn't about shape, it's about brightness, about difference. A flower in the dark may look invisible to us, but to a moth it glows faintly in ultraviolet light. Many plants that bloom at night have evolved to reflect UV light in patterns only visible to creatures with special eyes. Moths are among them. Their eyes are sensitive not just to what we call visible light, but to these hidden wavelengths. This means that when a moth flies through a moonlit garden, it sees signs we cannot. It sees trails on petals, like soft arrows pointing to nectar. It sees reflections on leaves, outlines on bark, flickers of movement in the dim. Their world is drawn not in sharp lines, but in gradients, soft, blurred changes that we might miss entirely. Inside the moth's brain, these signals come together in a slow, careful way. They are not looking for crisp edges or straight lines. They are building a feeling of space, a sense of nearby and far away, bright and dim, warm and cool. This is a kind of seeing that does not rely on certainty but on softness. And in that softness is safety. It allows them to navigate around branches, to land on petals, to avoid threats. But even more beautiful is how this vision allows them to sense the approach of other living things. A moving shape that blocks starlight, a sudden shift in temperature, a flicker in the pattern of wind, all are seen, not directly, but felt through the eye's sensitive structure. Some researchers believe moths also process visual information differently. While our eyes adjust slowly to darkness, moths are ready the moment the light fades. Their visual system responds rapidly, enhancing low light. This makes them not just creatures of the night, but masters of it. In places where even starlight is weak, thick forests, underbrush, dense fog, they still move with grace. Their eyes do not give them a complete picture, but rather a moving glow map of the world. And they don't need much more than that. Their brains take what little they see, and fill in the rest with a movement, scent, memory. They are not confused in the dark. They belong to it. There is also something deeper happening, something that echoes inside us, though we may have forgotten it. Long ago, before electric lights flooded our nights, humans too lived in soft darkness. Our ancestors used firelight, moonlight, starlight. Their eyes were better at adjusting, their sleep rhythms tuned to the rise and fall of natural light. In many ways, we once shared more with the moth. We listened to the dark. We moved more slowly. We let the shadows speak. The moth has never forgotten how to do this. It still trusts the dark, moves through it not with fear but with skill. And yet the night is changing. Our artificial lights spill across landscapes like rivers of brightness, drowning the soft light of stars. For the moth, this is not illumination. It is confusion. The lights we place along roads, outside homes, in cities, they are too strong. They overwhelm the moth's gentle sense of contrast. They erase the signals on flowers, hide the UV patterns, flatten the gradients. In some places, the moths no longer come, and in their absence the flowers that depend on them fade too. Night pollination, once rich and delicate, begins to unravel. What once was a dance of mutual beauty becomes silence, but not everywhere. In forests far from cities, in gardens left wild, the moths still rise. Their eyes still catch the glimmer of petals under the moon. They still read the world in glows and shifts, in scents and edges. If you were to walk there, slowly without a flashlight, and let your own eyes adjust, you might begin to sense it too. The slow return of night vision. The feeling that the world does not end at darkness, but simply changes shape. The moth knows this. It reminds us. And so their eyes are more than tools. They are symbols of another way to see, one that is not impatient, one that is not obsessed with sharpness, one that trusts the soft, the gradual, the hidden. Perhaps we need that kind of vision again. Not just in the dark, but in life, in the way we look at others, at nature, at time itself. Not everything must be clear to be understood. Some things are meant to be felt slowly, quietly, like the flutter of wings in the dark. Let's move deeper now into the soft inner world behind those shimmering moth eyes, into the space where seeing becomes more than light. In humans, sight is a way of knowing. We trust what we see, we depend on it. But in the moth's world, vision is only one piece of a gentle symphony. It flows alongside scent and vibration, together forming a fuller picture than light alone can offer. What the moth sees is not a frozen image, not a sharp photograph of the world. It is a living painting, always shifting with the wind, always touched by a memory. His vision does not freeze the moment, it flows through it. The moth sees motion not as disruption, but as music, reading even the flicker of a leaf or the sway of a flower as part of its map. And in that map nothing is fixed. Everything is soft, adaptable, alive. In the dark we imagine danger, but for the moth, the dark is home. Its eyes are not hindered by it, they are sculpted by it. Some species have what are called superposition eyes. Unlike the apposition eyes of day-flying insects, where each tiny lens sees its own part of the world, superposition eyes gather light from multiple directions and focus it into one image. This means the moth does not need bright light to see, it gathers whispers of light from all around, blending them into a soft whole. The result is not clarity but completeness, not sharpness but sensation. The night may seem empty to us, but to the moth, it glows with 1,000 quiet clues. This kind of vision has other advantages. In a study of hawk moths, researchers found that these delicate creatures could track flowers moving in the breeze at night with precision equal to daylight flyers. They could hover in front of a bloom, adjust for shifts in the air, dip their long tongues deep into nectar chambers, all with vision most would call limited. But their eyes are tuned not just to light, but to change. They sense direction, flicker, shift. This gives them a moving reference frame. The moth doesn't need to know where a flower is in perfect clarity. It only needs to know where it's going. It's not about fixing the world in stillness, but dancing with its motion. Their visual world is also shaped by contrasts. Instead of full-colour richness, many moths rely on brightness differences to understand edges, depth, and object separation. A light petal against a darker background stands out sharply to them, and where we see only grayscale at night, their sensitivity to UV patterns allows a flower's centre to glow like a beacon. These differences, invisible to us, are loud and clear to a moth. Even in moonless nights, when cloud cover dims the stars, the moth moves with ease, guided not by perfect images, but by echoes of brightness and dimness, movement and pause. In this world, even the timing of sight matters. Moths see differently depending on how fast the light changes. Their photoreceptors, the cells in their eyes that detect light, respond to changes in brightness more quickly than ours. This gives them a higher flicker fusion rate, meaning they can detect motion with fine precision, even in the dark. To a moth, a fluttering leaf or the twitch of a spider's leg is visible, even when it moves too fast for us to notice. They are not fooled by stillness or shadows. They feel the life within the dark. But their vision does more than find food. It connects them to each other. Some moths use light not only as a guide, but as a way to gather. They rise into the air, circling dim glows, searching not just for flowers, but for companions. Their wings reflect faint patterns when touched by moonlight, and their eyes are tuned to detect those reflections. Even without words, they find one another through glimmers. This is not light as brightness. It is light as language. A quiet call answered by presence. Some moths go even further. There are species whose eyes have evolved to function both day and night, changing sensitivity based on ambient light. Their retinas shift between cones and rods, like a forest waking at dawn or preparing for sleep. This adaptive mechanism allows them to transition between worlds, to carry the memory of night into day and the softness of moonlight into the glare of sun. Their vision is not limited to one realm, it is flexible, resilient, and always listening. In this way, moth vision is more than biology, it is philosophy. It teaches us that there is no single way to see. That clarity is not always about brightness, that meaning does not always require detail, and that sometimes to understand we must look softer, feel deeper, trust the patterns that do not appear immediately but emerge in time. Like the moth, we might begin to value not what dazzles the eye, but what moves through it gently, not the glare, but the glow. And what of us? Our vision is powerful but narrow. We see only a thin slice of the spectrum. We crave sharpness, colour, resolution. But in doing so, we sometimes miss the wider picture, the invisible threads that moths read with ease. Threads of UV, of scent, of direction carried in darkness. The moth does not miss these. It follows them, gliding through the night with wings tuned to a world we forget exists. It reminds us that seeing is not always knowing. Sometimes it is feeling. So the next time we find ourselves in the dark, uncertain, reaching for light, perhaps we might pause. Let our eyes adjust, let the shadows settle, and ask, like the moth does, not what we can see, but what is quietly calling to be noticed. For in the hush of night, in the spaces between light, there is a kind of vision that does not show but reveals. A seeing not of objects but of rhythms, not of surfaces but of essences. That is what the moth finds with every blink of its strange, beautiful eyes. Let us now return gently, gliding into the final folds of night with the moth still in flight, its eyes wide open to the soft mysteries around it. Morning is near, but the world is not yet awake. The darkness still lingers, full of cool breath and quiet motion. In this fading realm, the moth completes its story, not with an ending, but with a turning inward, a slowing down. Its wings beat more slowly now. Its body responds to the cool, to the shift in scent, to the dimming of moonlight as the sky quietly brightens. But its eyes are still open, still reading the fading signals, still tuned to every tiny change. Even as light returns, the moth sees in a way that does not depend on brightness. It sees with memory, with habit, with feeling. And memory in the moth's vision is not stored like pictures in an album. It is stored in pathways, in preference, in the familiarity of glow and scent and motion. Each night the moth rewrites part of its map, not in words or thoughts, but in the way it flies. A route that brought safety is marked in the nervous system. A flower that offered sweetness is encoded in the antenna's responses. A breeze that signaled danger is remembered in a twitch of muscle. Their eyes take in what is necessary, but the body completes the picture. Vision in moths is not isolated. It is part of a symphony where every sense hums in unison. As light floods the world again, the moth seeks stillness. Not out of fear, but because it knows the night's rhythm has passed. Its eyes, built to draw in shadows, now close to the light. It folds its wings and tucks itself beneath bark, behind leaves, within the hush of stone. In these hidden places, it becomes almost invisible. Its patterns mimic moss, lichen, dead leaves. What we might call camouflage is, for the moth, a continuation of sight. It sees what the world looks like and becomes it. This is not imitation. It is belonging. It is protection through participation. By turning itself into part of the background, it disappears from danger. And even while resting, the moth's eyes remain gently alert. Not wide open, but not entirely closed. Just enough to detect the warmth of a predator, the vibration of a branch, the glow of a shadow falling across it. These are not eyes of fear, but of awareness, a kind of vision that continues softly even through stillness. This passive watchfulness, this quiet knowing, allows the moth to wake when it must, to move when it is safe, to trust the patterns it has always known. Now we might ask, why does this matter? What can we learn from a creature who sees so differently from us? The answer lies not in what the moth sees, but in how it sees. It reminds us that vision can be soft, that perception can be gentle, that we do not need to flood the world with light to understand it. The moth teaches us to trust contrast, to welcome subtlety, to accept that not all truth is brightly lit. In a world that chases sharpness, speed, and clarity, the moth moves slowly, reads softly, and understands deeply. It does not force the night to reveal its secrets. It listens until they emerge. There is a kind of wisdom in this, a way of knowing that does not grasp but receives. The moth is not confused by darkness because it has never demanded that the dark become light. It has simply learned to see what is already there. This is not lesser vision. It is quieter, older, and in many ways more complete. While we light up the world to find our way, the moth teaches us to walk gently, to let our eyes adjust, to see not just with our eyes but with every part of ourselves. And so, as we close this story, let the image linger, a small creature, wings outstretched, drifting through a garden while the world sleeps, its eyes catching patterns we will never see, its movements guided not by command, but by invitation. Every flicker of its wings, every turn, every hover in front of a blossom, It all comes from a kind of trust, a trust in sensation, a trust in the unseen, a trust in the dark. Perhaps we too might learn to trust the parts of the world we cannot fully see, to believe in what can only be felt, to value the hidden, the quiet, the soft flickers of meaning that do not arrive with loud signals but with gentle shifts. Let the moth remind us that seeing is not just about eyes, it is about attention, about patience, about moving slowly enough to notice the light that others miss. So the next time you find yourself in darkness, whether in the world or in your life, remember the moth. Remember its soft vision. Remember how it reads the world not with brightness but with grace. And perhaps like the moth, you too will find your way, not by lighting every corner, but by listening to the glow that's already there. In the stillness of night, where sight begins to blur and the edges of the world dissolve into shadow, another sense awakens. It floats through the air, silent but powerful, moving between flowers and wings, between leaf and breeze. It is scent, not the kind we notice with a quick breath, but a deeper signal, layered and ancient, filled with messages written in molecules. For the moth, scent is not just smell, it is language, it is direction, it is memory. And in this story we will follow the paths moths trace in the dark, not with their eyes, but with their antennae stretched wide like fingers reading braille in the sky. To understand a moth's world, we must leave behind the way we think about smell. To us, it is a momentary experience, a passing sensation. But for the moth, it is a map. The air is not empty. It is filled with invisible trails, thin rivers of scent that move with the wind. Flowers release them in pulses, timed with the hush of night, and the moth catches these whispers with organs so sensitive they can detect a single molecule among millions. Their antennae, delicate and long, and not just extensions of the body. They are finely tuned instruments, covered in tiny hairs that catch scent particles like nets in the sky. Each hair on the moth's antenna contains receptors, specialized proteins that fit with certain molecules like a key fits into a lock. When the right scent molecule lands, it triggers a signal. That signal travels through the moth's nervous system and lights up parts of its brain devoted to smell, more space than is given to vision. This means that scent is not just one of many senses, it is a primary one. It builds the world for the moth. And this world is rich with information. The type of flower, its distance, whether it has nectar, whether another moth has visited, it is all there, hidden in scent. One of the most remarkable examples is the pheromone trail. Female moths of certain species release a specific chemical signal that can travel for miles. This pheromone is designed not to be overpowering, but precise. Males, sometimes from kilometers away, detect it and begin to fly toward the source. They do not fly in straight lines, they zigzag, constantly adjusting to the wind, correcting themselves with every change in concentration. When the scent grows stronger, they know they are getting closer. When it weakens, they shift their path. This is not guesswork. It is a practiced, ancient behavior, written into their very cells. And they do not follow blindly. They can distinguish between similar scents. A moth does not chase just any smell. It responds to the one that matches its species, its instinct, its memory. In the night, many flowers bloom at once, many signals drift through the air, yet the moth finds the one that belongs to it. This is the art of olfactory navigation. It is subtle, responsive, and deeply personal. No two moths follow exactly the same path because each one responds to the world slightly differently. The air may be the same, but the way it is read through antennae, through history, through Neden is unique. Some moths even adjust their sensitivity. If a scent is faint, the antennae become more alert, their neurons more eager to fire. If the scent is overwhelming, the moth may slow its response, filtering what it needs. This balance allows it to move through complex environments, gardens, forests, meadows, without becoming lost in the noise. Their scent processing is not just about detection, it's about refinement. They prioritize, they focus, they choose. But scent is more than a guide to food or mates. It is also a signal of place. Flowers, trees, soil, even the smell of water, all help the moth understand where it is. Each ecosystem has its own blend of odors shaped by the plants, the animals, the time of day, the moisture in the air. To a moth, this is a kind of signature. A forest smells different than a field, even if the flowers are similar. The moth remembers this. When it returns the next night, it searches not just for the flower, but for the air that felt familiar. the mixture that meant home. This ability to remember scent has been tested. In experiments, moths trained to associate certain smells with nectar rewards were able to remember their choice and return to it later. They could even adjust their behaviour depending on the time of day, visiting certain flowers at night and others in the early morning. This shows a level of learning and memory that goes beyond instinct. The moth is not simply reacting. It is adapting. It is recalling. It is choosing based on experience. And all of this happens in silence. We do not hear the moth's choices. We do not see the trails it follows, but they are there, moving through the dark like threads of perfume. Every flower blooms with a message. Every breeze carries a clue. The moth, with its quiet wings and reaching antennae, gathers them and builds a world from what it collects. No maps, no stars. Just scent. To us this may seem fragile, but it is not. The scent trails the moth follows are resilient, able to stretch across wide distances, able to survive shifts in wind and temperature. And the moth, in turn, is persistent. It does not give up easily. It follows the trail until it reaches the source, and when it does, it drinks, it rests, it pollinates. This is how entire ecosystems are shaped. Not with loud declarations, but with soft landings. Not with grand migrations, but with tiny flights guided by invisible maps. So when we speak of navigation, we must expand our meaning. It is not only about seeing where one is going, it is also about sensing, about interpreting what cannot be seen, about trusting signals that float without form. The moth shows us that to move with purpose in the dark is not only possible, it is beautiful. It is an act of reading the world with your whole being, of letting every breath guide you closer to what you need. This is the language of scent. Not spoken, not written, but lived. A language with no words, only pathways. A language we have mostly forgotten, but which the moth remembers still. Let's drift deeper now, into the unfolding tapestry of scent that moths read with such grace. When a moth moves through the dark, it is not wandering. It is navigating an invisible garden, a world drawn in wisps of molecules, each with its own story. This language does not shout, it whispers. It changes with time, with temperature, with the quiet rhythm of the night. A flower that releases one scent at dusk may shift its fragrance by midnight, tuning its signal to the hour when the moth arrives. These changes are not random. They are conversations shaped by evolution, by cooperation, by the slow dance of need and reward. And the moth listens. Its antennae sweep the air like arms through water, catching everything. In that gentle scanning lies a kind of knowing, a sensitivity so fine-tuned that it can trace not only the presence of a flower, but its freshness, its health, even its nectar level. A newly opened bloom smells different than one visited many times. The moth can tell, it chooses, it remembers. And this memory is not stored in photographs or written notes. It is stored in behaviour, in preference, in the way the moth turns slightly faster toward one scent and slower toward another. These subtle adjustments build its map of the world. Each step of this journey is layered. The moth smells the flower, yes, but also the air around it, the warmth, the moisture, the wind. These factors shape how scent moves, bending it like a river curves around stone. A gust might scatter the molecules or stretch them thin. The moth does not panic. It responds, it circles, it climbs or dips. It slows down when the scent fades and quickens when it returns. In this way, the moth becomes not just a traveller but a weaver, threading its body through a pattern of invisible trails. Scientists have tried to model this behaviour, using machines to track scent plumes and artificial moths to mimic flight. They've discovered that the moth's path is more intelligent than it appears. It zigzags not because it's lost, but because this motion allows it to sample both edges of the scent plume. By comparing the strength of scent on the left and right, it can determine direction with remarkable precision. This strategy, though simple, is effective even in chaotic winds, and it's not just instinct, it is refined learning. With each flight, the moth becomes more skilled, more efficient, more attuned. Some moths take this further. The death's head hawk moth, for example, is known to invade beehives in search of honey. It does so not by stealth alone, but by mimicry. It emits a scent similar to the bee's own chemical signals, masking its presence. This is not a trick. It is survival. deeply encoded in its biology. And it shows us that moths are not just receivers of scent, but sometimes emitters, players in a more complex chemical theatre than we usually imagine. And in this theatre, flowers are not passive. They compete. They evolve scents that are more attractive, more targeted. Some mimic the pheromones of female moths, luring males to pollinate. Others change their scent throughout the night, aiming for different pollinators at different hours. One scent may call a moth, another a beetle, another a bat. The air becomes crowded with signals, and the moth must choose which to follow. This competition shapes ecosystems. It drives the evolution of both flower and moth. Their relationship is not static. It is a dialogue, always shifting, always refined. And the moth remembers. It returns to flowers that rewarded it. It avoids those that did not. Over time, these preferences change populations. Flowers that smell better to moths get more visits, more seeds, more chances to spread. Moths in turn evolve more sensitive noses, more selective behaviours. It is a cycle of mutual shaping. The moth is not just a pollinator, it is a sculptor, changing the garden with every flight. There is beauty in how quiet this process is. No fanfare, no announcements, just a tiny creature moving from bloom to bloom, guided by invisible threads. We often miss it because it happens in darkness, and because it speaks a language we no longer use, but once, long ago, we did. Humans too navigated by scent. We knew the smell of seasons, of rivers, of rain. We tracked animals by odour. We chose ripe fruit by its perfume. In cities now, the air is full of other things: car exhaust, concrete dust, electric heat. The subtle messages of flowers and soil are harder to hear. Yet the moth hears them still. And in that hearing, it carries out tasks that hold whole ecosystems together. Without night pollinators, many plants would fail to reproduce, berries would not ripen, seeds would not spread. The animals that depend on those fruits, birds, bears, humans, would feel the ripple. This silent work, done by creatures no larger than a thumb, keeps the wheel of life turning. It is service without recognition, flight without applause. And so the next time a moth brushes past you in the dark, do not brush it away. It is not lost. It is not nuisance, it is on a journey. Following lines you cannot see, responding to messages older than words. Let it pass, let it fly, let it find the flower that has waited all day to open. And in that brief meeting, wing to petal, scent to sense, the world becomes whole again. This is the language of scent. It speaks not in voices, but in presence, not in noise, but in trace. It does not demand attention, but rewards those who notice. And the moth, with its patient wings and careful turns, is one of its finest readers. The night is nearly over now. The flowers are beginning to close their petals, folding inward with the light. The air, once cool and thick with scent, begins to thin. The trails that were once bold are now fading, their edges blurred by the slow warmth of dawn. But the moth still moves, tracing the final paths of perfume that drift in the quiet. Its wings are slower now, its flight more gentle, more measured. There is no rush. It knows the scent well. It has followed this trail before, perhaps not exactly, but close enough. The memory is still fresh, not in thought, but in feeling. It flies not because it is searching blindly, but because it remembers how the air should feel, how the flower should smell, how the journey should end. It lands softly without sound on the petal of a flower that is only beginning to fade. There is still a touch of nectar, still a thread of scent that clings to the early light. The moth drinks slowly, not just to feed, but to complete the pattern. This is not merely a task. It is a return, a closing of a loop. The scent that pulled it from miles away now becomes part of it. The flower, in turn, is marked, touched, pollinated, changed. This is how life continues. Not through force, but through these quiet exchanges, these moments that pass unnoticed, these brief touches that bind species, seasons, and worlds together. And then the moth lifts again, rising just slightly, moving to find rest. Its antennae no longer search the air. They droop slightly, sensing only what remains. The sharpness is gone. The scent trails are broken, scattered by the day. But the moth is not lost. It has done what it came to do. The memory of scent is still with it. Even as the signals fade, it drifts toward a place it remembers. Cool, shaded, safe. Perhaps under a leaf, perhaps between the folds of bark, perhaps in the hollow curve of a stone. There it will wait, wings folded like pages in a book not yet closed, until the night returns. And when it does, the language will return too. The air will again grow thick with messages. Flowers will open, not for beauty, but for communication. Their scent will rise, drawn not to impress, but to connect. And the moth, waking quietly, will once more read that language. It will taste the air, catch the trail, and begin again. Each night is a new sentence in a story written by molecules, a narrative that stretches back through thousands of years. We rarely think of scent as language, but perhaps that is because we do not listen long enough. To truly understand it, we would need to be still. We would need to allow the signals to find us. We would need to believe that meaning can exist without words, that navigation can happen without maps, that a path can be felt, not seen. The moth reminds us of this. It shows us that knowing can be soft, that movement can be wise, that following a trail no one else can see is not confusion, it is clarity, practiced over lifetimes. Even the most delicate of creatures can hold great understanding. The moth, so easily ignored, is a master of its world. Its journey is not driven by chance, but by sensing, by trusting, by following something invisible and essential. That invisible thread, the scent trail, has shaped ecosystems, guided evolution, kept flowers blooming, and forests alive, and it continues to do so night after night, breath after breath. Perhaps there is a lesson in this, that we do not always need to know exactly where we are going, that sometimes the most important thing is simply to notice what is calling us, to tune our own antennae, however they take form, to the signals in the air around us. Maybe we do not need to light every path, solve every mystery, answer every question right away. Maybe we only need to pause, breathe, and ask, what is the air telling me? What trail am I following? What scent do I remember, even if I cannot name it? Let the moth be our guide, not just in science, but in softness. Let it teach us that there are languages beyond words, ways of knowing that require quiet, patience, and deep attention. Let it show us that meaning can drift, settle, bloom and fade, and still be beautiful. And as the light grows and the moth rests, let us carry that thought with us into the day, that sometimes the most powerful map is the one we carry, not in our eyes, but in the air we breathe and the memories we follow. There are fields that do not move but hum, meadows that do not shout but whisper. To the human eye they seem still, stretches of grass, clusters of trees, the low rhythm of wind brushing against leaves. But to the moth, these places are alive with signals, not the loud kind we expect, no flashing lights, no roaring sounds, but waves and pulses that touch the body like a second skin. These are the invisible worlds, the unseen layers of existence that lie just beneath the visible, waiting not to be seen, but to be felt. And in these whispering fields, moths do not just fly, they listen. Their bodies are built to receive these signals. Every part of the moth is a sensor. Their wings feel vibration. Their antennae catch scent. Their feet taste the surface of a leaf. But beyond that, there are signals we do not often think about. Electrical fields, changes in pressure, magnetic pull. These are the soft messages of the natural world, and the moth reads them with elegance. It does not need to understand them in thought. It understands them in movement. A shift in the breeze may alter its path, a change in temperature may adjust its rhythm. It is not guessing, it is tuned. One of the most fascinating forms of invisible information the moth detects is electrostatic charge. Flowers, it turns out, are not just bright or fragrant. They are electrically alive. When a bee visits a bloom, it changes the flower's charge, leaving behind a trail that says, "I've been here." Moths may detect this too, sensing which flowers are untouched, which still hold nectar, which are waiting. This charge is not a shock, it is a whisper, a gentle difference in energy that tells a story. And the moth, gliding quietly through the fields, gathers this information without a sound. But the world speaks in more than one whisper. Earth itself has a magnetic field, a vast invisible structure stretching from pole to pole. It is what makes compasses work, what guides migrating birds, and there is growing evidence that moths feel it too. Tiny structures in their bodies, perhaps crystals of magnetite, perhaps protein sensitive to magnetic forces, respond to these fields. This means that when a moth flies, it is not simply drifting. It is aligning. It is adjusting its body to the gentle pull of the planet. This is not visible. It cannot be seen or touched. But the moth moves with it, as if following a thread stitched into the sky. Even sound, in its quietest forms, shapes the moth's world. Bats, flying hunters of the night, use echolocation, sharp bursts of sound that bounce off objects. Some moths have evolved ears, not like ours, but small membranes hidden in their bodies tuned exactly to these ultrasonic calls. When they hear the clicks of a bat, they respond instantly. Some dive, some zigzag, some emit their own sounds in reply. Tiny clicks that confuse or deter the predator. This is not a panic. It is a conversation. A dialogue between hunter and prey, played out in the thin air of night, too high for us to hear. And there are other, softer signals, the moisture in the air. The warmth of a flower warmed by the last breath of day. The way the wind curls around a tree. These patterns may seem random, but to a moth, they are cues. They say, here is shelter, or here is danger, or here is something worth finding. The moth feels them through hairs on its body, through shifts in lift under its wings, through subtle tensions in the air. It does not see the world as we do, not in outlines and edges, but in currents and flows, in gradients of presence and absence. In the middle of a meadow, a human might stand and see nothing but stillness, but a moth feels everything. It reads the field not like a page, but like a living, breathing body. Every plant sends out its own mix of signals. Every surface carries echoes of who has been there and what has passed through. And the moth listens. It listens with its whole body. It does not need to understand every detail. It only needs to follow what feels right. This is how it survives. Not by being the fastest or the strongest, but by being deeply attuned. In a world full of noise, it thrives on signal. It filters what matters. It trusts its senses. And in doing so, it finds what it needs: food, mates, shelter, without seeing them in the way we would expect. It is a way of being that values subtlety, that moves slowly, that feels before it acts. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is power of a different kind. To sense the invisible is to live in a world larger than what the eye alone can offer. It is to be aware of threads most creatures miss. It is to be part of something older and more complex than sight. The moth does not question these things. It simply follows them because that is how it was made. Its body is a map of responses. Its wings are guides. Its night is full, not empty. So when you walk through a field at dusk and see a moth rise from the grass or drift near a tree, know that it's not flying randomly. It is reading the land, the sky, the air. It is listening to whispers we cannot hear. It is following invisible signs with perfect faith. It is part of a conversation older than language, quieter than thought, and in its silent flight the field speaks back. Let us follow the moth deeper into the heart of the field, where the quiet becomes thicker, almost textured. The sky above is still dark, scattered with stars, but the true landscape is not up there. It is all around, flowing through the air like threads of silk. As the moth glides, it is not only moving through space, but through sensation. The field beneath its wings is alive with microcurrents, tiny movements of heat, of scent, of electric energy that are invisible to her, but as real to the moth as are trees and stones. It feels these currents as surely as we feel wind on our face. The world hums with quiet information, and the moth, with its soft body and open senses, drifts through it like a reader moving across the lines of a book. Every part of the moth's body contributes to this silent reading. Its wings are not just for flight, they are surfaces of perception. Their structure is delicate but layered with nerves and fine header that feel air pressure, temperature shifts, and even the structure of the breeze. When wind moves differently around a tree or over a warm patch of ground, the moth knows. Its wings register the change, and it adjusts, not with thought but with reflex. It tilts, it turns, it slows, it lifts. The flight becomes less like travel and more like flowing, like a leaf floating on invisible waves, but with purpose. Scientists have tried to understand this by watching moths in wind tunnels. They introduce invisible gusts, shifts in humidity, tiny vibrations, and still the moth finds its way, hovering with precision, landing on flowers, weaving through obstacles with elegance. Its secret lies not in strength, but in feedback. The moth's sensors send constant messages to its brain, which adjust the muscles in its wings moment by moment. It is not planning, it is responding. Not commanding, but listening. This is how it moves through invisible worlds, by never assuming stillness, by always being open to change. One of the most curious signals the moth can sense is thermal radiation. All warm bodies, including flowers, release heat. Not enough to be felt by our skin at a distance, but enough to change the pattern of air nearby. Some moths can detect these changes and use them to find warm blossoms or to identify areas where insects have recently landed. It's not heat as discomfort, it's heat as information. The moth reads this warmth like a signature in the air, guiding it toward food or away from predators. It becomes a kind of vision made of temperature rather than light. In some species, the ability to feel vibration is especially pronounced. These moths don't hear in the way we do. Instead, their bodies pick up on sound waves passing through surfaces. The tap of a foot, the rustle of a branch, the movement of a spider nearby, all of it creates vibrations that ripple through the ground or the air. The moth, even in stillness, detects these. It responds not by fleeing blindly, but by shifting its posture, moving into deeper shadow or freezing altogether. It is the same quiet skill used to avoid bats, to evade birds, to slip unseen through the threads of a spider's web. And as the moth moves, it leaves traces too. Its wings stir the air. Its body picks up and carries tiny particles of scent and pollen. Other moths can sense this, especially when following pheromone trails. It's as if the moth writes as it goes, leaving a record in molecules that others may later read. These traces do not last long. They fade with the dew with the rising sun, but for a few hours they form a web of presence. A shared network linking moth to moth, moth to flower, flower to field. This invisible field is not chaotic. It has its own quiet order shaped by time and rhythm. Flowers do not release scent at random. They do so in cycles, often tuned to the activity of their pollinators. The moth learns these patterns. It knows when certain flowers open, it knows when the field begins to cool, it knows when the air carries more water and when it is dry. These are not conscious facts. They are remembered through experience, embedded in motion, in pause, in the subtle timing of flight. Over many nights, the moth builds a memory of the field, not in images, but in sensations. The same is true for magnetic sensing. Though still a mystery, researchers believe some moths can detect magnetic fields to orient themselves. Unlike birds that travel across continents, moths often stay close to home. But even in short flights, orientation matters. A flower to the north, a tree to the west, a warm rock near the edge of the field. These landmarks, unseen by eye, may be felt through a sense of magnetic direction. The moth doesn't need to know what north is, it only needs to feel which way feels right, and that gentle inner compass helps it find its way, night after night. All of this, the vibrations, the charges, the scents, the heat, the pull of the earth, comes together in one quiet truth. The world is not silent. It speaks constantly, just not in sound. The moth is not the only listener, but it is one of the most delicate. It survives not by fighting the world, but by becoming part of its hidden flow. It does not conquer the field. It belongs to it, and that belonging comes from listening, to everything. As we watch a moth flit across a field, we might think it fragile. But its journey is guided by a richness we rarely notice. The field may appear empty, but to the moth, it is alive with roads and rivers made not of dirt or water, but of sensation. It follows not what is seen, but what is felt. It trusts the air. It trusts the signals. And in doing so it finds its place again and again, with no map but the one written into its wings. Now, as the last hour of night begins to fade, the moth reaches the quiet edge of its journey. The invisible world that has guided it, those fine threads of heat and scent, of vibration and charge, begins to dissolve in the coming light. The field, once alive with silent conversation, begins to fall quiet. Flowers close slowly, holding their perfume for another night. The warm rocks cool, the breeze is still, and the moth, with its delicate senses still open, senses the shift. This is not a surprise. It is a rhythm it knows well. The world changes in cycles, and the moth listens to those cycles like a familiar lullaby. It doesn't rush or panic, it simply glides lower, softer, until it finds a place where the world speaks more gently again. Perhaps it finds the underside of a leaf, still cool with dew, or the groove of bark, warm and dry, or a space between blades of grass, where the wind cannot reach. Here, in this little fold of silence, it rests, and even in rest it is not cut off from the invisible world. Its antennae still register faint vibrations, its wings still hold the memory of temperature shifts, the field still hums softly, like a song playing in the distance. And though its senses may quiet, they do not close. The moth is still part of the fabric of sensation, even in stillness. In this final stillness, the body of the moth tells the story of the night. Its wings may carry specks of pollen from the flowers it visited. Its scent may hold the trace of plants past. Its flight has changed the air, stirred molecules, reshaped scent trails for the next night's journey. Nothing it did was loud. Nothing it did left a mark we would see. And yet it changed the field, slightly, gently, in ways that matter deeply to the web of life that stretches through night and day. This is how ecosystems breathe, through these tiny acts, these unseen dances, these exchanges between species who speak in softness. And still the moth remembers, not as we remember, not in pictures, not in language, but in the way its muscles move more confidently next time, in the way it turns more quickly toward the familiar scent, in the way it avoids a path that once led to danger. These are the moth stories, written not in ink, but in the body itself. Experience becomes motion, sensing becomes memory, and memory becomes survival. There is something deeply peaceful in the way moths move through the invisible world. They do not demand to see, they do not insist on knowing, they simply receive, and in that reception they respond with grace. To live like this is not to be passive, it is to be attuned, to sense what others overlook, to let the world speak first, and to follow what it says with trust. We might learn from that. In our lives, filled with noise and brightness and constant movement, we often forget to listen to the quieter signals, the tension in the room, the coolness of morning, the way something feels without explanation. These are our invisible fields, and we too carry sensors for them, instincts, emotions, memories. The moth does not see its world as divided. There is no line between the visible and the unseen. All of it is part of a single experience. All of it is valid. The pressure of the air matters as much as the colour of the flower. The warmth of the breeze matters as much as the shape of the leaf. Its reality is layered, and it moves through those layers with soft confidence. No wonder it seems to float. It's not just flight, it's participation. The moth is not outside its world, it is woven into it. And so, when we see a moth drift by our window or flit near a porch light, let us not think it lost. Let us not think it simple. It may be following signals we can't detect, it may be weaving through threads of information we've long forgotten how to feel. Its presence is not an accident. It is a continuation of the night's work. And if we pause and breathe and open ourselves just a little more gently to the moment, we may begin to feel those threads again too. Let the moth remind us that the world is full of quiet guidance, that even in stillness there is conversation, that even in darkness there is navigation. We are not alone in this world, and we are not meant to move through it blindly. The invisible fields around us, emotional, sensory, atmospheric, are part of our story too. And like the moth, we are capable of listening, if only we allow ourselves to slow down. The sun begins to rise now, the colours return to the field, the visible world reasserts itself. But beneath the surface the hum remains. It is fainter, yes, and harder to detect, but it is still there, waiting for the night to fall again. And somewhere a moth rests, antennae tucked, wings folded, eyes closed but not unknowing. It has heard the field. It has moved through the unseen. It has found its way home. When night falls and the stars come out to whisper above the trees, something else begins to shine. Not the distant galaxies, but small earthbound lights. Porch bulbs, lampposts, glowing windows, headlights sweeping across roads. These artificial suns punctuate the darkness in a way nature never did. And somewhere nearby, wings flutter. A moth rises, its soft body catching the breeze, its delicate antennae sweeping the air. It turns, adjusts, and begins to fly toward the light. We've all seen it. That circling dance, the spiralling flight, the tiny body caught in a loop around a glowing bulb. It seems confused, hypnotized, helpless. But it is not madness. It is memory. It is a story of how ancient light once guided the night, and how today's glow confuses that gentle compass. Long ago, before electric lights bathed the sky in their constant hum, the only lights at night were those given by the earth and the heavens. The stars, the moon, the flicker of fire, the soft shimmer of bioluminescence in the deep woods or sea. For nocturnal creatures like moths, this world of subtle glow was more than scenery. It was guidance. Light meant direction. The moon, in particular, served as a fixed point. Its position told the moth where it was in the world, allowed it to maintain a steady angle during flight. This behavior, known as transverse orientation, is simple but powerful. By keeping the light source at a fixed angle, a moth can travel in a straight line through vast open darkness. But this guidance comes with a catch. The moon is far away. Its rays strike Earth almost in parallel lines. Artificial lights, by contrast, are near. Their rays radiate outward, not in parallels but in wide cones. And so when a moth tries to use a porch light like it would use the moon, keeping it at a fixed angle, the result is a spiral. The angle can't stay steady when the source is so close, and the moth begins to turn in tight loops, forever trying to correct a path that no longer makes sense. What once was a simple rule for a distant moon becomes a trap under an artificial sun. And still the moth tries, not out of stubbornness, but out of ancient programming. The rule once kept it safe, directed it toward open sky, away from obstacles and predators. The rule is old, written into its wings and nerves and eyes. It cannot unlearn it in a single night, or even in 1,000, and so it circles, around the porch light, around the street lamp, around the campfire flame. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it burns. We call it confusion, we call it tragedy, but to the moth it is simply what the world is telling it to do. There is more to this attraction than navigation. Moths, like many insects, are also drawn to the warmth and brightness of light. Some species fly more readily toward ultraviolet, which many bulbs emit without our notice. To them, the glow is not just a beacon, it is a signal of something alive, something flowering, something worth exploring. The moth approaches hoping for nectar, for scent, for the signs of a bloom, and what it finds is a glass bulb, a hot coil, a surface that gives no nourishment, no signal in return. Yet the draw remains. Light changes the moth's behavior at a deep level. It can suppress its ability to respond to other cues, scent, temperature, even the magnetic field. Under intense light, the moth becomes less sensitive to the world. It is as if the glow overpowers its senses, drowning out the subtler messages it usually hears so well. The longer it stays, the more it forgets what else is there. It becomes quiet, still, drawn in completely. Some scientists have studied how artificial light affects moth navigation on a large scale. The results are troubling. In areas where lights burn all night, moths are less likely to pollinate flowers. They spend more time near lights than in meadows. Populations begin to change. Some flowers go unvisited. Birds and bats that feed on moths lose a food source. Even mating can be disrupted. Moths miss the pheromone trails of potential partners or are distracted mid-flight by a passing car's beam. A single light can bend the path of hundreds of tiny lives. And yet even with these challenges, the moth continues to try. Not because it is foolish, but because it is faithful. It trusts the light. It follows it, not knowing that the world has shifted around it. The rules it follows were once beautiful, once perfect. But the lights we've built do not speak the same language. They shine without point or purpose. They blind instead of guide. And the moth, moving with ancient grace, still believes they lead somewhere true. There is something heartbreaking in this, but also something noble. To follow light, even when it deceives you, is not weakness. It is devotion. It is the deep pull of what once kept you alive. The moth is not lost. It is trying to find the moon. It is trying to find the stars. It is trying to find its place in a sky that has changed without warning. If you watch a moth circle a porch light long enough, you might begin to see this, not as aimless fluttering, but as longing. A kind of memory in motion. A dance that began 1,000,000 years ago under a silver moon, and has found itself now confused beneath a buzzing bulb. The motion is still beautiful. The devotion is still whole. It is the world that has shifted, not the moth. Let's follow the moth now, beyond the immediate glow of the porch light, into the broader landscape where scattered lights flicker across hillsides, roads and fields. From above, the earth at night looks speckled with artificial stars, each one humming softly into the sky, blurring the edges of true darkness. To the human eye it may seem beautiful, a sign of life and activity, but to the moth, this patchwork of glow is disorienting. Its ancient compass, once aligned with the steady glow of moonlight, now struggles to make sense of shifting, scattered lights. Each one sends a message, but none of them leads home. The moth's mind does not form questions the way ours does. It does not wonder why the lights are so many or so close. It does not ask why one draws it in and another burns its wings, but it feels the pull, it reacts, it follows, and in doing so it begins to lose the threads that once guided it through the night. The scent of the flower is fainter. The breeze no longer carries familiar cues. Its wings still work, its senses still receive, but the landscape has changed. The whispers of the world are muffled under the buzz and blaze of modern light. And yet, not all lights confuse. Some biologists have discovered that the way a light is built, its colour, intensity, angle, can make a difference. Warmer lights, those tinted with yellow or red, seem less disruptive. Blue and white light, which mimic the short wavelengths of daylight and ultraviolet, are the ones moths chase more fiercely. These lights speak the same language as the signals flowers use. A white LED on a city's street corner may mimic unintentionally the glow of a moonlit bloom. The moth doesn't know the difference. Its senses respond faithfully. It flies closer. It circles. It stays. There is an elegance in how the moth tries to adjust. It doesn't give up. It explores the light, flying around it at different distances, measuring angles, searching for something that makes sense. This circling, often seen as helplessness, is actually problem-solving. A kind of quiet computation repeated again and again. The moth is not panicking. It is navigating with the tools it has. And even when the light confuses it, even when it leads nowhere, the moth continues. Not because it is foolish, but because it is consistent. It trusts the world to speak in a way it understands. But the world has changed faster than evolution. The moth, which once played an essential role in pollinating night-blooming plants, now finds its role slipping away. In cities, it may fly all night without visiting a single flower. Its body, once brushed with pollen, may remain clean. The plants it once served begin to fade, unpollinated, unfulfilled. And with them go the bats, the birds, the insects that depended on those plants. Light, in this way, becomes not just a distraction but a disruption, a fracture in the ancient web of nighttime life. Still, some places remain where the lights are few. Forests deep and quiet, valleys tucked away from roads. Here the moth flies as it always has, navigating by the stars, by scent, by air currents, by the magnetic tug of the earth itself. In these dark places, its spiral becomes straight again. It follows a clear path, not because it knows where it's going in human terms, but because it understands how to listen. Its antennae catch the scent of jasmine. Its wings feel the warmth rising from a stone. Its eyes see the silhouette of a flower etched against starlight. These are the signs it evolved to trust, and in their presence, it is whole again. In these places, moths are not confused. They are confident. They dance through the dark like brushstrokes in air. Their wings catch the memory of mountains. Their bodies trace the scent lines of rivers. They visit flowers no one has ever named, flowers that bloom for 1 hour and then disappear. Their only partner, the moth that finds them. These are moments lost to most eyes, but they are the heartbeat of a living ecosystem. Pulses of quiet connection, of give and receive, of trust. And so we begin to understand that the moth's draw to light is not a flaw. It is the natural extension of a once perfect rule, a rule that said, follow the glow and you'll find your way. And that rule still holds, if the light is right. The problem is not in the moth, but in the lights we have made. Lights that shine without story, without rhythm, without place. Lights that do not speak the language of the forest, but of machines. Lights that say come, but give no rest. To fix this, we do not need to rid the world of light. We need only to change how we use it. Shielded bulbs, warmer tones, timers that give darkness time to return. These are small things, but they ripple outward. They bring back the signals moths need. They return nighttime to its softer state. They remind the sky of stars. The moth continues its flight. Some will never reach their destination, but many still will. Some will circle a lamp and break free. Some will skip the brightest paths and find the flower waiting in the dark. The rules inside them still work. They only need a world that listens, that responds gently, that lets the old compasses point again to truth. And we, watching them flutter past our windows, might learn something too, about the power of old instincts, about how quickly the world can shift beneath our feet, about how important it is to notice what draws us in and whether it's leading us where we truly need to go. Now we come to the quiet end of the story, where the glow fades and the sky begins to change. The artificial lights still burn in windows and on poles, but the moth is no longer flying, its wings are still. It has tucked itself beneath a leaf or between the cracks of bark, waiting for darkness to return in its purest form. The night is ending, but the question remains. Why do they keep flying toward the light? Why do they circle and spiral even when the glow offers no warmth, no nectar, no shelter? The answer is not confusion. It is loyalty. It is trust. The moth still believes in light, not in the bulbs we build, but in what light once meant. To the moth, light was always a guide. It came from the moon, from stars, from the horizon touched by firelight. These were gentle lights, constant and far. They didn't flicker. They didn't draw too near. They illuminated without drowning the world. That is the kind of light the moth remembers. And in some quiet part of its nervous system, that memory still burns. So it flies toward what seems to shine like the moon, not knowing that the source is closer, hotter, harsher. The spiral begins not with a mistake, but with faith. And that faith does not break, even when the path turns strange. In this final stillness, as morning light grows, we begin to see the deeper shape of this longing. The moth does not only seek a destination, it seeks alignment, a way to make sense of the world by using its body's rules, its angle to the light, its tilt in the air, its balance against wind. These are the internal harmonies it uses to feel at home in space. When those harmonies go off, when the light draws it too close, too vast, too sideways, it keeps trying to restore them. It turns, loops, circles, searching, not just for the light source, but for a return to balance. That balance is what it truly seeks, not the bulb, not the flame, but the feeling of being in sync with the world, a path that flows, a direction that feels right. And that is where the tragedy lies, not in being fooled, but in not being able to find that harmony in the places where light has been changed. The moth is not just seeking brightness, it is seeking meaning. It is seeking a path where all its senses agree, where its wings match the wind, its eyes catch the contrast, its antennae feel the trail, and the world hums in one soft direction. Even the moths that never find their flower leave something behind. In their path, in their flight, in the way they move through the light, there is something of beauty, something of persistence. They remind us that nature does not always give up when things change. It keeps trying over and over to find a way forward using the tools it knows. And in that effort, there is grace. But change must not come only from them. We must also listen. The lights we leave on all night, outside buildings, along highways, in empty parking lots, serve little purpose after a certain hour. And yet they burn, and in burning they draw, and in drawing they change the way the night speaks to those who have always listened. If we could dim them, time them, shield them, choose them more carefully, we might bring the night back to what it was. Not dark in a frightening way, but dark in a living way. A place of signals and silence and soft truths. In doing so, we'd not only help the moth, we'd help ourselves. We'd see the stars more clearly, we'd sleep more deeply, we'd remember what it means to move slowly, to wake gently, to be part of a rhythm that is not always lit. Light is a gift, but too much of it becomes noise. The moth reminds us of this, not by speaking, but by circling, by spiraling, by reaching toward the glow, even when the path leads nowhere. As day breaks and the sky turns pale, the moth is hidden again, quiet again. But the glow remains in our minds, that soft dance around the bulb, repeated 1,000 times across the world each night. It is not madness, it is memory. A memory of a night that once spoke in moonlight, a memory of direction, of faith, of finding one's way by following what shines. Let us carry that memory too. Let us remember that not all who follow the light are lost. Some are simply trying to return to a world that once made sense, that once flowed with meaning, that once lit the way home with silver silence and stars. And perhaps if we learn to glow more gently like the moon, like fireflies, like old stars, we will once again become lights worth flying toward. There is a quiet in flight that we do not often think about. We imagine movement as something loud, filled with thrust and push and speed. But the moth does not move this way. Its wings are not engines, they are whispers. When it takes to the air, it does so without rush, without force. Its lift comes not from strength, but from grace, from how softly its body listens to the air, how precisely it meets the invisible fingers of wind that rise and fall through the night. In stillness, in hovering, in that moment between motion and pause, the moth reveals a mastery of aerodynamics unlike any machine we've built. It is not the speed of its wings, but the way they speak to the air that keeps it aloft. The wings of a moth are delicate, often wide in proportion to its body, and covered in countless tiny scales. These scales are not merely for colour, they shape the airflow across the wing. Each one sits like a tile, overlapping slightly, disrupting air in ways that reduce drag and increase lift. As the moth flaps its wings, it doesn't just push against the air, it folds into it, lets the air bend around it. The strokes are not just up and down, but figure eights, subtle sweeps that pull the air into vortices, spinning currents that press upward with surprising force. This is called delayed stall. It means the moth can tilt its wings at high angles without falling. Instead of stalling out like a plane, it rises. Hovering for a moth is not a pause. It is a state of perfect balance. Its wings beat in careful symmetry, hundreds of times a second, adjusting slightly with each motion. When it approaches a flower, it doesn't land right away. It hovers in front of it, adjusting its body so that its long tongue, its proboscis, can reach the nectar without needing to perch. This is a skill few insects possess. It requires rapid calculation, tiny muscle adjustments, and an exact awareness of air pressure, weight, and position. The moth does this not with thought, but with a body so finely tuned to flight that the sky becomes an extension of its skin. Some of the largest moths, like the hawk moth, can hover in place like hummingbirds. Their wing muscles are asynchronous, meaning they don't rely on a nervous signal for every flap. Instead, the muscle itself can stretch and contract in rhythm, allowing for faster, more efficient movement. This saves energy, even as it allows for precision. A hawk moth's wings beat nearly 70 times per second. In that blur, the air flows over and around the body in intricate patterns. Researchers use smoke chambers and lasers to study these flows, and what they find is astonishing. Tiny tornadoes of lift, swirling rings of force that keep the moth suspended, even in rough air. But the moth's mastery of stillness in flight is not only mechanical, it is intuitive. It adapts instantly to wind, to shifts in temperature, to the movement of the flower beneath it. If the breeze sways the bloom, the moth moves with it, never landing, never colliding. It holds position, not with brute force, but with responsiveness. It senses more than it controls, and that sensing becomes the secret to its flight. It lets go of the need for complete command and instead joins the conversation with the air. This is why its motion feels like floating, like it is being held up by the sky itself. And yet for all this ability, the moth's wings are fragile. They can be torn, bent, dusted away. A single drop of water can weigh them down. A single spark can end their flight. Still they endure. Still they lift. The moth does not fear the fragility of its wings, it trusts them. It knows that stillness does not mean weakness, that quiet flight can be strong. And so it continues, lifting into the dark again and again, tracing arcs through the air as soft as breath. There is also something emotional in their motion. The way they rise and fall, not in straight lines, but in gentle curves, as if pulled by invisible tides. They don't dart or zigzag like other insects. They drift, they spiral, they hover. These patterns are not inefficient. They are exploratory, they allow the moth to read the world, to find what it's looking for without haste. This slowness is part of their survival. It keeps them safe. It makes them harder to predict, harder to catch. It lets them blend with the rhythm of the night. Stillness in motion, that is the paradox the moth teaches. that even as it moves, it listens, that even as it flies, it rests. It is the art of being fully present in the air, not charging through it, but dwelling within it. When we see a moth suspended before a flower, wings a blur, body still, we are witnessing a miracle of natural design. Not loud, not showy, just perfect balance. Just a creature so in tune with the invisible world around it that it becomes part of the wind. And in that state, in that moment of hovering, the moth becomes more than an insect. It becomes a symbol of grace, of patience, of the kind of strength that does not announce itself but simply is. We think of flight as a seagape, as speed, but the moth shows us another way, flight as stillness, as listening, as trust. Let us return to the sky now and follow the moth as it hovers once more over a pale blossom, swaying gently in the breeze. In that quiet between wing beats and drifting air, something remarkable is happening. Beneath its velvet body and paper-thin wings, physics is at work. But it does not feel like math. It feels like music. Each wing beat is a note, each adjustment, a harmony. The moth is not flying against the air, it is dancing with it. When the air pushes, the moth does not resist. It yields, corrects, flows back into balance. This is the heart of its aerodynamics. Not power, but response. It does not force stillness. It finds it. Unlike larger flyers, birds, bats, or airplanes, the moth lives in a world where the air itself is thicker, heavier in proportion to its size. In this world, every molecule of air is felt. Every gust is a wave to ride. And the moth, because of its small size and light frame, can ride those waves with precision. Its large surface area, relative to its weight, allows it to stay aloft with less energy. But it must flap more quickly, beat after beat, always adjusting. This creates a flight that looks uncertain to our eyes, fluttering, wavering, spiraling, but in truth it is deeply controlled. The wobble is part of the plan, the chaos is choreographed. Scientists studying moth flight have discovered that this apparent instability actually makes them more agile. Each small unsteady movement allows the moth to test the air, to feel for change. The slight sway left, the dip forward, the lift upward. It's all data. And from that data comes decisions. The moth uses instability not as a flaw to be corrected, but as a way to learn. It thrives in it moves through it, it trusts it. Even the structure of the moth's wings helps in this learning. Flexible and jointed, they can twist mid-flight, changing angle and shape with each beat. This is called passive deformation, and it gives the moth the ability to shape its wings to the air in real time, curving into it, pushing away from it, creating lift from change. This ability is especially important when the moth approaches a flower. As the bloom sways in the breeze, the moth must match it, not just in direction, but in rhythm. The flower may tilt forward just as the moth reaches it. The wind may rise at the same moment. The moth does not stop. It hovers, waits, aligns, and then extends its long proboscis to drink. This moment, so small and quiet, is actually a feat of aerial precision. In that second of stillness, everything must work in harmony. Wings, antennae, body, brain. And it does, again and again. Some moths even perform backward flight. Like hummingbirds, they can hover and retreat, then return. This allows them to explore a flower without fully landing, to test for danger or taste before committing. Backward flight requires immense control and awareness of lift and drag, of balance and weight. It is not instinct alone, it is adaptation. Over millions of years, moths have shaped their flight to meet the world's needs. Their wings are not just tools, they are instruments of survival, of sensing, of expression. And there is another secret hidden in the stillness of their flight: silence. Moths are among the quietest of flyers. Their wings do not buzz or beat the air loudly. This silence is a shield. It protects them from predators, especially bats, whose ears are tuned to the sounds of movement. The structure of the moth's wings, with their soft edges and layered scales, muffles the turbulence they create. Some moths even have special structures, tiny scales that scatter sound to make them even harder to detect. They do not run, they disappear, they vanish into silence. This silence is not only useful, it is beautiful. It means the moth moves through the night without disrupting it. It shares the darkness with others. It leaves room for other voices, crickets, frogs, the rustle of leaves. It does not try to outshine them, it joins them, and in doing so it becomes part of the night's harmony. The moth's flight is not a conquest of air, it is a cooperation. It takes only what it needs. It uses only as much lift as it must. It does not dominate the space, it blends with it. And yet, for all this softness, the moth's flight is resilient. It can withstand storms, gusts, sudden drops in pressure. Its wings may look fragile, but they bend without breaking. They yield without embark failing. This is the power of flexibility, of meeting the world with openness instead of rigidity. When a strong wind comes, the moth may fall for a moment, but it regains its lift. It does not panic. It realigns. It tries again and again. Its path is not always straight, but it is always purposeful. In this way, moths teach us something profound about how to move through the world, not only physically, but emotionally. We often think strength means control, firmness, unwavering will. But the moth shows us a different strength, one that listens, one that yields when needed, one that finds stillness not by freezing, but by balancing movement and pause. The moth does not fear being small or soft, it makes those qualities its greatest tools. So the next time you see a moth hovering in front of a flower, or brushing past a light, pause and watch. See how it holds itself in space, not with force, but with grace. See how it listens to the wind, matches the motion, dances without sound. There is something in that moment, a kind of wisdom, a reminder that stillness can be found even in motion, that quiet is not emptiness but awareness, that being light can sometimes make you more grounded than weight ever could. As the night wanes and morning begins to breathe its slow light across the sky, the moth folds its wings and comes to rest. It has flown for hours, softly, carefully, purposefully through a world that never shouted, only whispered. Now, in the hush before dawn, it finds stillness not in the air, but on a leaf, on bark, in shadow. The silence it once moved through becomes the silence it settles into. Its wings, so recently alive with motion, now press together gently, hiding the colours and patterns that helped it vanish into the world. Yet even here in rest, those wings carry the memory of flight. Every fold remembers the air. Every edge remembers balance. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the echo of all the motion that came before. This stillness is not just rest. It is part of the cycle. The moth cannot fly forever, nor would it need to. Its journey each night is not a constant chase but a series of moments. Lift, hover, sip, drift, rest. Swan requires the same awareness, the same grace. Even in sleep, the moth remains a creature of air. Its body is shaped by it, its instincts are tuned to it. The muscles that powered its hovering grow quiet but not cold. The sensors on its antennae remain alert to vibrations, temperature, scent. It listens in stillness, just as it listened in flight. The place it chooses to rest is not random. The moth selects spaces where the wind won't reach too harshly, where the light won't strike too directly, where its colours blend into the textures of the world. This camouflage is not just visual, it is structural. The moth becomes part of the surface. The curve of its body matches the curve of a twig. The tilt of its wings mimics the angle of a leaf. And so in this stillness it disappears. It becomes invisible not by hiding, but by harmonizing. This harmony is everywhere in the moth's life. Its flight, its stillness, its feeding, its resting, all are tuned to the rhythms of the world. And at the center of this rhythm is breath, a slow, constant exchange. The moth breathes not with lungs, but through tiny holes along its body called sprickles. As it flies, the movement of its body draws air in. As it rests, the exchange continues, gentle, quiet, enough. This breath, like everything else in the moth's world, is unforced. It does not strain to live. It lives by moving with the world. Even the wings, now folded and still, are not forgotten by the wind. A breeze passes, and they tremble slightly. A shift in air pressure, and they flex. They are not stiff. They are ready. They remain part of the story, even when paused. In some moths, the wings are so finely tuned that they can absorb sound and vibration, helping the moth detect predators or changes in the environment. These are not just surfaces for flight, they are living instruments, always sensing, always responding. There is beauty in this quiet, a kind of peace that comes not from the end of movement, but from the understanding that movement is not always needed. The moth teaches us that stillness is not a failure of flight, it is part of flight. The hover, the drift, the rest, they are all expressions of balance, and balance once achieved does not need to be loud. It can exist in silence, it can breathe without effort. It can be enough to simply be. In a world that often values motion for its own sake, the moth reminds us that some of the most powerful forms of movement are the ones that seem like none at all. The tiny adjustments, the pauses in the air, the silent calibrations that keep the body in place, the mind focused, the journey smooth. It is not how far you go that matters, it is how deeply you listen as you move. The moth's strength lies not in distance or speed, but in attention. It is present in every second of its flight, and so, when it finally rests, it does so completely, with no strain, no regret. The field, the forest, the garden, wherever the moth has travelled remembers its passing. The flowers touched, the scent trails followed, the air disturbed only gently. The ecosystem has felt its presence, and now, as the moth sleeps, that memory lingers. Even in stillness it has purpose. It has left something behind. It has contributed to the quiet fabric of life. And in this way the moth becomes more than a creature of the night. It becomes a symbol of how to move through the world with softness, with listening, with grace. Its wings do not shout. They murmur. They ask permission of the air. And the air answers. This is the aerodynamics of stillness. Not flight for the sake of flight, but flight that honours stillness. That finds pause not at the end, but throughout the journey. So as the day unfolds and the moth disappears into shadow, let us remember what it has shown us, that strength can be sent, that motion can be tender, that to hold still in the air, even for a moment, is to trust the world enough to carry you, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to push harder, but to simply let your wings rest and listen. The night is not just something the moth moves through, it is something it remembers. Long after the breeze fades and the flower closes, something lingers, not in words, not in pictures, but in motion. The way it turned left toward a sweeter bloom, the place where the air felt warmer, the shape of a petal under moonlight. These are not memories the way we understand them. They are deeper. They are woven into wings, encoded in scent, folded into the rhythm of flight. And each time the moth returns to the dark, it brings these memories with it, not carried in a bag, but carried in the body itself. This is not instinct alone. This is learning. This is remembrance. We often think of moths as creatures of reflex, following the same ancient patterns again and again. But they do more than repeat. They refine. When a moth finds a flower rich in nectar, it does not just sip and fly away, it remembers. Not as a photograph, but as a feeling, a scent mixed with a direction, a breeze, a moment of lift. When it returns the next night, it does not wander at random. It searches with intent. It chooses with knowledge. Studies have shown that moths, even with their tiny brains, can recall specific flower types, times of bloom, and the pathways that brought them to food. Their memory guides their motion. But how does such memory live in so small a creature? In part, it is chemical. The moth's brain holds neurons that respond to odour, to pattern, to reward. These neurons strengthen with experience. A moth that finds nectar at a certain flower releases dopamine, a chemical that marks the event as important. This helps shape future behaviour. The moth becomes more likely to return, to follow that scent again, to hover longer in familiar places. In this way, the memory is not static. It is active. It lives in repetition, in reinforcement, in the quiet adjustments of choice. And memory does not live alone. It travels with learning. A moth raised in a garden with certain flowers will favour them over others, even when presented with unfamiliar options. Its experience becomes preference. Its journey shapes its taste. This is not mere instinct, it is behaviour shaped by life. The moth, through hundreds of small decisions, sculpts a personal map of the night. No two are alike. Even among the same species living in the same field, no two moths fly the same path. Each carries its own version of the dark. The wings play a part too. Their shape and wear record the journey. A moth that has flown many nights shows it in its wings. Frayed edges, worn scales, faded colour. These are not just marks of age, they are stories, proof of encounters, escapes, discoveries. A missing scale might mean a brush with a spider's web, a bent wing edge, a narrow escape from a bird. These marks do not slow the moth, they guide it. They change how it moves, what it avoids, how close it flies to a wall, how fast it turns. The body becomes a memory in motion. Even the way a moth lands is shaped by memory. A flower that felt unstable underfoot is avoided the next time. A petal that curled under pressure is remembered. The moth adapts. It learns not just what to seek, but what to avoid. These are not grand strategies. They are small, careful changes that improve survival. And over time, they build a behavior that looks like wisdom. In the dark, this wisdom is most visible. The moth moves with purpose even when the world is unclear. It follows a scent not just because it smells sweet, but because it recalls what came before. It tilts its wings not just because the air shifts, but because once, in similar wind, it found safety. The memory is not of specific moments, it is of patterns. And these patterns form a language the moth speaks fluently, even if it cannot explain it. And in this language, time stretches. A moth lives only days or weeks, yet in that time it forms a detailed picture of its world. It remembers mates, routes, flowers, threats. It does not pass this memory on in stories, it passes it on in survival. In the success of finding food, of escaping danger, of laying eggs in the right place, and those that succeed carry forward the traits that help them remember. In this way, memory becomes evolution. The knowledge of one night becomes the instinct of the next generation. But memory in the moth is more than survival. It is connection. When it returns to a flower it visited before, it continues a story. The pollen it carries is from another place, another time. The bloom it visits has opened once more, offering nectar again. The moth's arrival is not random. It is reunion. The flower remembers in its own way, by rewarding visitors. The moth remembers in flight. Together they write a memory that lives in movement. This is the quiet intelligence of the night. It does not boast. It does not teach through words. It teaches through touch, through the soft press of wings. And in this teaching, the moth learns who it is, where it belongs, how to find what matters. It may not know its name, but it knows the shape of its world. It knows the feel of safe air, the smell of true nectar, the distance between one bloom and the next. That knowing, repeated night after night, becomes the memory of flight. And so the moth does not wander. It retraces, it rediscovers, it relearns over and over the places that nourish it, the paths that keep it safe. Its wings may flutter, but its purpose is steady. Each beat carries the weight of what came before. Each turn echoes a choice made long ago. In this way, the night becomes not just a place to fly, but a place to remember. Now let us glide deeper into the moth's memory, not as an object to be held, but as a motion to be lived. Each wing beat is a moment revisited, not in thought, but in the way the moth leans into the wind or curves around a tree. There is no pause to reflect, no slowing down to recall. Memory in the moth is active. It lives in the timing of turns, in the angle of lift, in the moment it chooses to hover rather than land. When the moth returns to a field it has visited before, the air does not feel new. The curves of scent, the low hum of warmth rising from stone, the shimmer of a known flower's glow in ultraviolet, all of it feels familiar, as if the world itself is welcoming it back. This memory is not like the memory we carry in stories or images. It is a body memory, a movement memory, the way a dancer's foot finds its place on the stage without thinking, the way a bird returns to its nest over miles of ocean. The moth does not need to recall where it has been with clarity. It only needs to feel the shape of what is right. And when that shape appears, a scent, a softness in the breeze, the slight pull of gravity near a flower, it knows. It does not hesitate. It flies forward. Experiments with moths have shown that they can learn quickly, even in a single night. If given a choice between two flowers, one that rewards and one that does not, they will return to the one that gave them sweetness. Even more astonishing, they remember that choice hours later, even after sleep. Their brains, though small, contain structures that help reinforce these lessons. A tiny bundle of neurons called the mushroom body acts like a filter, strengthening the signals that matter and letting others fade. This is how memory is built, not in collecting everything but in knowing what to keep. And what the moth keeps is always tied to experience. It remembers not just the flower, but the light that surrounded it, the way the wind felt near its petals, the warmth or chill of the air. Each memory is layered, not a point, but a cloud, a bloom of impressions, sensory and soft, that guide the next flight. These impressions fade, but they do not vanish. They become preferences, tendencies, habits. And slowly, the moth's path becomes less random and more refined. What once was trial becomes confidence. What once was luck becomes knowing. This knowing helps the moth avoid danger too. If it brushes too close to a web or feels the vibration of something hidden among the leaves, it will veer away faster the next time. Its wings respond a little earlier. Its path adjusts. It does not have to understand the web as a threat in our terms. It only needs to know, last time something felt wrong here, and that is enough. The air carries warnings, and the moth remembers them, not through fear but through sensation. The body learns where to hesitate, where to hurry. There is a special kind of memory in the way moths find their way back to resting places. Some species return to the same shelter night after night. A hollow in bark, a spot under a leaf, a crease in stone. They do not mark it. They do not map it. But they remember. The journey to this place becomes familiar. Each tree passed, each gust felt, each moment of shade. They return not with direction, but with recognition. The world itself guides them, if they listen closely enough. And perhaps most beautifully, moths also carry the memory of bloom. Flowers in many ecosystems open only at specific times, some for a single night, others for a few hours under moonlight. The moth learns these times. It arrives not too early, not too late. Its internal rhythm becomes entwined with the life of the plants around it. This is not coincidence. This is a kind of shared memory, passed between species, not through speech, but through survival. A moth that arrives when the flowers open eats and thrives. One that arrives too late finds nothing. Over generations, the successful timing becomes instinct. The memory becomes part of the body. Even in migration, memory plays a role. Some moths, like the silver Y moth, travel vast distances across continents. They follow wind currents, seasonal shifts, and unseen cues in the Earth's magnetic field. Each year, they retrace paths taken by ancestors, routes never taught, only felt. It is a form of collective memory, shaped by the journey of thousands before them. No single moth makes the full round trip. But the population remembers, the flight continues. And what happens when memory fails, when light pollution masks the moon, or when a field is ploughed, or when a flower no longer blooms? The moth searches, it circles, it hesitates, it expands its path, probing for the scent that once was there. In this we see both the strength and the fragility of memory. It guides, but it can be disrupted. Still, the moth tries again. Its memory is not rigid. It can relearn, it can adapt. And in that resilience there is hope. Because even in a world that changes fast, the moth continues to remember. And its way of remembering, through sensation, through motion, through patience, is a way we might learn from. It shows us that knowing does not always need to be loud or sharp or perfect. Sometimes it can be soft and still be strong. Sometimes the path we follow is not lit by certainty, but by the memory of how it once felt to be on the right track. So the moth flies on, night after night, guided not by map or memory as we know it, but by something just as deep, a memory in the wings, in the air, in the feel of a flower's breath. It remembers enough to find its way, and that, in the hush of darkness, is all it needs. Now the final hour of night arrives, and the moth makes its quiet return. The moon lowers itself behind the hills, the air grows cooler, and the flowers begin to close, folding the night's secrets into their petals. The moth, too, folds its wings. But something remains, something that does not fade with the dark. The memory of its flight still lingers, not as a thought, but as a thread woven through its body. Each wing beat held information, each turn was a choice, each pause in the air a question answered. And now, as it settles into shadow, the moth carries the night with it, not like a shadow to be shed, but like a softness stitched into its very being. In the silence of rest, memory becomes breath. The moth does not dream, but the impressions of its journey shape the way it sleeps, the warmth it found, the currents it trusted, the paths it learned to avoid. These are not forgotten. They are held inside the very way the moth now rests. positioned just so, tucked into the surface it remembers to be safe. When it wakes again, these traces will guide it, not with noise, but with knowing. It will lift into the air already prepared to turn left, already sensitive to the right breeze, already listening for the right note of scent in the air. Flight will begin where memory left off. This kind of memory, lived rather than stored, is not unique to moths, but in them it is purer. Without language, without vision like ours, without maps or machines, they navigate using presence. They do not overthink their return, they do not hesitate. They let what they've learnt shape what they do next. It is a kind of wisdom the world rarely praises, the wisdom of quiet pattern, a listening long enough to let the environment become part of you. The moth has no ego in this. It does not call itself wise, it simply remembers. And what of loss? Sometimes the flower is gone, the field is changed, the lights are too many. The moth returns to a place that no longer speaks the same language. What then? Still it flies, still it listens, still it tries again. This is perhaps the most beautiful part of its memory. Not that it remembers perfectly, but that it accepts imperfection. It does not demand the world be exactly as it was. It lets memory guide, but not control. If the scent is different, it follows it anyway. If the wind is colder, it adapts. This is not forgetfulness. This is forgiveness. And this is how memory survives change, not by resisting it, but by bending gently with it. The moth's brain does not erase what it once knew. It layers new impressions on top of the old, letting experience reshape the map. In this way, memory becomes fluid, not a frozen picture, but a living pulse, and as the moth drifts through this pulse, it makes decisions that keep it alive, that help it find food, shelter, safety, that help it belong. In the quiet corners of our own lives, we too carry memories like this, felt in the body, not spoken in the mind. The way our steps turn homeward without a map, the way we lean toward familiar scents, the way we pause when the air reminds us of something we can't name. These are moth-like memories. They guide us through the darkness without needing to be loud. They are not always complete, they are not always correct, but they are honest, and they are enough. The moth's memory teaches us not just how to survive, but how to move with humility. It reminds us that remembering is not about clinging to the past, but about trusting what we've learned to carry us forward. That we don't have to see the whole picture to take the next step, that sometimes to remember is simply to feel, this air is familiar, this turn is right, this place is safe, and in that feeling we continue. As the light grows and the moth becomes invisible in the day, its memory sleeps with it, folded under its wings, resting in the quiet circuits of its tiny mind, waiting for night to rise again. And when darkness returns, the moth will wake. It will lift into the air, not lost, but remembering. Not repeating, but evolving. Its path may look new, its choices may shift, but the memory of flight will guide it. Because memory for the moth is not a burden. It is not a weight. It is not something to carry, it is something to become. And as its wings move through the darkness once more, it becomes exactly what it needs to be. A story written in motion, a map made of air, a song composed entirely of quiet return.